I'm going to go to Illustrator. You can see that it has the file that I created last week is in this kind of like recent files area. So that's kind of convenient. I can open up that way. But if it wasn't there, I would just have to find it on my computer. So I would go to, I have my MMP 100 folder, desktop, and I would just go into my Illustrator self-portrait and double click on the self-portrait. Um, and there's this like what's new with Illustrator. That might be a good thing to check out if I want to see some cool tutorials and features and stuff like that, but I'm going to skip that for now. So last time I created this kind of like little character guy that's going to be my self-portrait. And let's see, let's group this guy together. I'm going to delete this like moon thing that I created. So you can see like by default, if I like click and start dragging shape around, and if I want to prevent that from happening, if I want to treat this guy as like a thing, I can select the entire character. So I'm just going to use the direct selection, which I can the B key to get, and then it's it's probably hard to see because it's very light, but I'm just dragging a box around. If I turn off, very light, but there's this little dotted box, and when I drag around, you can see everything gets selected. So if I zoom in, you can see everything has these like, outlines, and then what I can do is I can right click and click, and so that'll turn this into a, and now I can move the whole thing very easily. I won't like randomly select one of the parts of the group. So that's a really convenient thing to use, and it's also going to help us look at something that we're going to see in a couple different today, which is how Illustrator kind of treats all the different shapes and stuff and lines. So if I open up my layer, now I have a group. So a group is kind of like a layer, but it's inside a layer. But I still have my individual parts inside the group. So if I wanted to edit one of those individual parts, now I can't really select one of them just by clicking. Like if I wanted to like rotate this eye back in place, I can't just click on the eye. But what I can do is I can double click on my group. This opens what's called isolation mode. So now only my group is open. I don't have anything else in my scene. So I actually have everything that I've created in here. But now I can click on the individual elements of this group, and I can make edits to them and count if I want. Um, so when you group something, you can't select the parts individually, but you can double click, go into isolation mode, and then edit these sections. And then once you're in isolation mode, you can, by hitting the arrow up there that appears at the top of the canvas, I can go out of here. I think I can just hit the escape key as well. Yeah, if I just hit the escape key, that gets me out of isolation mode. So making a little group is a nice way to kind of organize my shapes and drawings. So let's bring the grid back and let's put this guy right here. And I'm going to draw a little bit using the pen tool just to kind of review. We already went over this, but it is the trickiest part of using Illustrator. So I'm going to review this a little. I'm just going to draw like maybe a little background for my character. So I'm just going to click on the pen tool, and the pen tool has a few different modes, as we know, which is why right now it has like a little asterisk, which means that it could be different. And so I want to make a layer for the layer so that I don't interfere with my character's face. And then let's set our stroke back, and let's set it to 2 editing. So to make a new shape, I just can click anywhere to start. And then I have a point where I'm starting. And so I can start to just add points. Maybe I'll just make like a straight line across the page, this, and then I'll make like a little up and down sort of like. So I've made 2 points, and you can see it's drawing a line in between. And then I can add more points to it. You can see this is on top of my character. I'm going to fix I can just keep adding all the points I want. When I'm done with my shape, I go back to the original point, and you can see the pen tool turns into a circle. And when I click again, now I'm kind of like done with this shape, and I can start a new shape. Okay. But then when I get the direct selection tool, let's delete this shape. Let's click on this little shape that I just made. So now that I've created the shape, I can still edit it. So with the direct selection tool, I can move the whole thing around. With the point selection tool, I can move these individual points, but it's a little tricky because I have to make sure they're not all selected, or I can move multiple points if I kind of drag across some points and then, so yeah, you have to be careful here. So if I drag across those points and then move them around, I can move a bunch of points at once, but you have to be really careful because what I did before is I clicked outside of the points and that kind of changes the selection so they're not. So I can also drag on these little circles if I want here. If I wanted that to affect all of my points, I'd have to select all. Drag the circles a little bit, although I accidentally changed my character. So let's lock that layer. I'm just going to put a lock on that layer so I can't accidentally. Then I'm going to make these rounded. That looks kind of nice. Change the color so it doesn't look the same as me. And I'm just going to turn the stroke off actually. And then now maybe I want to put this behind the character so I can just drag it down like that. Another way to do that in Illustrator is to right click on the shape and then go to arrange. And you can send it all the way to the back. So if I had a lot of layers, that would be very convenient. So I wouldn't have to drag it. Or I can move it forward or backward. So if I move it backward, it didn't do anything. But if I send it to the back, it still doesn't do it. Because this layer is locked. Okay, let's try that again. Back. I guess it still doesn't do. I guess it's only within the layer that it does that. Anyway, so let's move this back here. Now I kind of want to make it a little taller, so I'm going to grab these points, just drag up. Uh-oh. Let's lock my character again. Drag these points up, something. Okay, that looks kind of cool. And so now we have like a little background. And let's curve these bottom points in a little bit. Okay. And then let's unlock my character and kind of center. Okay, so then with my pen tool, let's grab this layer again. So I'm going to click on this so we can see the point. So now, once I've created the object, if I want to make edits, remember I can move the points using the direct selection, but I can also add new points in here. So if I get close enough to the line, you have to be kind of careful. So if I'm outside of it, it's an asterisk, which means it's going to start a new one. But if I'm inside, then and I'm close, then I'll see a plus. When I do a plus, it's going to add a new point. And then I need to go back to my direct selection tool. And now I have this new point. And since there's a curve, I also have these like handles to make the to handle the curve. So I can move those down and get. So this part is a little bit trickier, but could be add some points to your shape. You can also remove points. So if I go back to my tool and I find a point here, let's select the. Let's see. Yeah, so if I find a point here, it turn into a. Let's see. If we go into here, So usually you can remove points. I don't know why it's not showing up. I think I'm doing something. If I hold Alt, then it turns into a convert ink. Uh, I tried different. There we go. Okay, for some reason it will let me minus this point, but not these points. Not really sure what the deal is there. Let's see. Maybe I can. I don't know why it won't let me do that. Maybe it has to. Okay, so I guess I can't minus something that has a. Good to know. I guess that would break. Okay. So then we can leave here, back here. Okay, so that's a quick review of the pen tool. There's also the curved pen tool. This is good for making curved lines. And you can see it's going to automatically add this little curve in here as applying the tool. So if you know you want your lines to be curved from the beginning, let's. If you know you want your lines to be curved from the beginning, the curve shape tool, way to go. Kind of making a shape. Let's get back here. Um, so that's the curve tool. It works pretty much the same way as the regular pen tool, except it has those built-in curves to begin with. Okay. So that's a little bit of a review of the pen tool. Again, it is tricky to get used to, so I recommend just playing around with it for a little bit, try to draw some different shapes and kind of get used to moving between the pen tool and the selection tools because you kind of have to move. Okay, so let's lock this layer up and I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at text and then we'll look at some cool different types of effects. So I'm going to make a new layer here and let's say I want to put some text on here. I would choose the type tool, which I can just hit T to get the type tool, or I can click on the button. And you can see there's a couple other type tools, like I can type on a path, or I can do vertical typing. I'm just going to start with the regular type tool. And so the type works a little bit differently than other, I'm going to go over how to work with types. So I'm just going to have my uh, character saying hello world. And so the default type is just kind of small and black by default. If I select this type, I can change the appearance over in the properties panel. So you can change the fill, use like color. Let's do purple, kind of like my character. And I can add a stroke if I want to. I'm gonna not do that for now. But then down here in characters where I can make other types of adjustments. So I can make the type bigger by increasing the size here. I only have one line of type, but there's other aspects I can change, like uh, how much space there is between lines. Let's say my type was really big. Eventually, it would go to the next line. Then eventually, it disappears. That's one thing to be aware of. Once you get too big for the box that you created, your type is going to disappear. So if that happens, you can make the type smaller, but you can also just get your selection tool and just make this box big, and the type will appear. And you can make the box smaller like this if you want the type down, or you can. So then you can change other stuff like how much space is there between the lines. So if I increase this value, that second line is getting further away. And if I decrease this value, getting closer. So that's the line height here, this A thing on the left. And then the space in between letters. bit with that, but I can do it here. Okay, so I can change the space between letters using these values over here. I can stretch it out, or I can make it more close together. I can also directly change the box that the type is in. So this is kind of fun. I can like uh, take one of these points and move it over like this, and the type will kind of try to fit. It's not always going to be perfect, but you could make some interesting different shapes like that. Uh, that's another way that you can kind of change the way it looks and fit it into these pieces. And I can curve the edges here as well if I want to. If I want to make type fit into a specific shape, I could copy the shape and paste. So let's undo go back here. I can also change the paragraph so I can center the type or right align or justify, center justify. There's a few different ways that I can change this. Go with centered for now. Um, okay, so I can do a whole bunch of stuff with that. One thing that I have to be careful with type, so I'm going to look at a few different kind of fun things that you can do with different effects, but certain effects only apply to different types of shapes. So type is a good way to explore this. But I didn't actually talk about the font. Do that real quick. So another thing I can change with my type is the font. There's a bunch of different fonts here. You can also download fonts from different sources, but you'll probably be able to find something that Adobe set of. I kind of randomly scrolled to this, uh, like a full pixel font. There's like script fonts, uh, lots of different types of fonts. And so depending on what the style you want to go with is, you might find better fonts. They're like little symbols. Let's see. That one's kind of cool. Kind of nice. Retro cycles. So maybe we can go with that. I might turn the letter spacing just a and okay, so that's looking kind of nice. Uh, so as I was saying, we can apply some different effects to this, and we can apply this to lots of different things in Illustrator, but type is a good thing to use because it has this specific quality, which is that I can edit the text. So anytime I want to with this type, I can choose the type tool, double click on here, and change the text. So, if I want to add in a smiley face instead of an exclamation point, I can change that text. But having the ability to change the text restricts some of the other things that I can do with my type. So I want to go over to some effects, and then I'll show you guys an example of something to update our text. So I'm going to make a bunch of changes to this. So one thing that I usually do is I'm going to select this layer and lock it, and then I'm going to duplicate it so that I can always go back to this beginning one. I'll turn this off. Here's my layer 3 copy. So a couple different effects that I can add on here that are kind of fun. Oh, let's turn. Oh, whoops. Okay. So I can go to effects, and there's a few different things in here. So there's 3D and materials. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, like I can inflate a shape and do crazy stuff with this. This is pretty processor intensive, so it might not be the best for this class while I'm doing streaming and recording all at the same time. But you can see you can make some cool effects in here. Is going pretty. I'll probably skip, but I can do some wild stuff with 3D. Yeah, it's taking a while to render. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna have to adjust it. So let's undo this and look at some other effects. I'm gonna turn undo. Okay, there we go. So then under effects, so that's 3D. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. I can convert it to a shape. Distort and transform has some fun stuff as well. Like I could do a twist, and so I can increase this angle That's going to kind of twist text around. So I could make something kind of cool like that. So maybe we'll do like 60-degree angle. Try. Let's do a 90-degree. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. There's also stuff like we can warp the text. So there's similar things in here. You can turn it into an arc and kind of make an arc or like that. There's a whole bunch of different effects in here. Kind of like the Photoshop stuff. We don't have time to go over everything, but that's kind of a cool. Um, so then another cool effect that I can do with my shapes is called blend. And I'm going to show this with a couple shapes before I do it with it. This is going to give me a chance to show the difference between shapes and rendered text. So I'm going to actually go back. I'm going to grab this green shape that I created earlier. Let's put this on its own layer. Make a new layer. And I can actually just unlock this and grab this green shape and put it on its layer. Then I'll lock this here. And so what I'm going to do with this shape is I'm going to do a blend. So I'm going to hold Alt, or I'm going to select the shape first. I'm going to hold Alt to make a copy of it and drag it like down here somewhere. And then I'm just going to change the color a little bit. So kind of blue color. And then I'm going to select these two shapes. And then I'm going to go to Object and go to Blend and go to Blend Option. And then we can specify a number of steps, or we can just do smooth color. I think for this one, I'll go back to Object, go to Blend. And now you can see it's blending between these shapes. And the cool thing about this is I can select the blend, and I can actually go back to the options to see, so what would it look like if I did like 8 steps instead. So now I have like these visible changes. And so if I kind of like the way that looks, but maybe I want a little bit more, I can add it. So I can like edit this blend, I can add to it and stuff like that. And I can also move it around. So if I grab one of these points on my blend, I can move it up and move it over. I can grab the original shape and change that. So I could move these points around. I can get the selection tool and rotate the shape around, and it'll rotate my blend, or I can make it larger, and I can just move the shape around, and it just like adjusts this blend to kind of do whatever I want. Pretty cool. So I can get some pretty cool. Okay, so you might want to do that with your text, but you're not going to be able to right away because the text is not really a shape. So as long as the text is editable, as long as I can go back here, the way that the text is being rendered, not really a shape that I can use. So the way that I can turn the text into a blend effect or other types of effects that require these shapes. I'm going to make a couple copies of this. So let's take this text and duplicate it a couple times. And I'm going to take one version of it and actually I'll just leave it right there for now. So I'm going to hide this. Let's grab this. So I can take this text and there's a couple ways I can do this. One is I can go to Object and expand. And if I click OK here, now I have a group of shapes rather than just text. If I zoom in here, now I can't edit this anymore. So if I take my type tool, it doesn't give me the option to edit this shape. But if I double click in here, I have like these individual shapes now that are these compound paths. So that's pretty cool. It creates these compound paths for me, which is nice. Compound paths are kind of hard to work with. So another thing that I can do, I can select my group. I'm going to choose stuff. And if I right click on here, or no, sorry, I have to select all this stuff, go to object, and go to um, compound path. I don't want compound paths, so I'm going to release the compound paths. And because I used an O and a D in here, you can see that some of the compound paths didn't quite work out because I have like this middle part and then this part. Okay, so if I might like that, I might say, you know what, that looks cool, I'm going to leave it. But if I want to make sure to get that text correctly, I can select both of the parts and use my object selection. So it's pretty easy. And then I can just go back to my select tool and section. So I just have to make sure to just select the middle section. Now I have a nice path that I can work with. I can do the same thing over here. So I'm gonna both of these, get the object builder, select the outside, go back to the selection tool. There's a lot of like steps like this in Illustrator. You just kind of have to get. So that's a good enough. I'll leave the other two so you can see the difference. So I'm going to save this here. And so now that I have this group, uh, if I go to effect and I do another like twist, notice it only affects the text here. So if I want to fix that, I have to go here and band again, I think. Try that again. Oh, now it's still, let's see, object. Okay, convert to shape. Still getting, okay, object. Probably just had to expand that. If we, all right, I forgot where this is, so let's Google it real quick. So I'm just going to say Adobe Illustrator, type by objects. Okay, text. Oh, okay. I think we have to go back. Okay, we have to go back and apply this. So let's delete this. Let's grab what I like to make. And so let's apply our effect first. Do our twist effect. There we go. Then expand appearance. Okay, now we can, now we're good with this one. Okay, so that's our first one. Let's grab this one. I'm going to duplicate this again because it's good to have a lot of copies. Okay, let's go with our other, let's lock this one for a second. Let's grab this one, change the color. And for this one, I'm not going to do an effect, so I'll make this a little bit smaller. Or no, let's convert this first. So for this one, I can just do type and then create outlines. That's another way that I can convert this into a shape. And I'm just going to make this a little smaller here. And now I should be able to blend these two together. I'm going to select, I'm going to unlock this, select these two, and go blend, make, and we'll go blend options, and let's do like 100 steps. There we go. So now we can get kind of a cool effect with our text the same way we did with our shape before. Makes it a little bit hard to read. I might want to make another copy of this group here. So let's duplicate that. And let's drag it outside of our and color. There we go. Okay, so now we can still kind of read it, but we get this really cool sort of blending effect with the rest of the type. And we can still edit this. Like if I go back to this group here and select it, if I want to like move it, oops, knock this down as well. Okay, more time. I want to move this around. You can see my blend effect around with it. So this is just one example of one effect that we can, but it kind of shows you a lot of the different types of effects that you can get with Illustrator. Again, there's a whole bunch of other ones of these. If you look in here, there's repeat effects, there's distort, there's all sorts of stuff in there, text wrap, and then under the effect menu, there's a bunch of other stuff in here. So a couple things, basically what you want to, what I want to kind of review is that sometimes it doesn't work out exactly the way you want it to. There's like different ways that you kind of have to go through steps. And so sometimes you have to try a few different sort of like processes to get the right thing. Um, but eventually you can get some kind of cool effects if you just play around with this different stuff. You may end up something that you don't like and you can go back. I always recommend making lots of copies of things so that it's easy to kind of start over from the beginning if you don't get exactly what you want the first time. And you also don't really have to use these kind of effects. I think they're kind of fun to play around with, but you might have other things that you want to focus on with your illustration. This like text blend thing that I ended up creating uh, doesn't really exactly fit in with the design of the rest of the thing. So I don't know, maybe I can, well, it kind of looks like it's same colors. Uh, so yeah, you can kind of play with different ways of doing it. There's not one specific way that you have to do the self-portrait. I was just kind of showing a few different examples that you can do. Um, but again, as I mentioned, there's a lot more stuff in here to play with. Um, so we don't have time to cover everything. But if there's other stuff that you're interested in and want to go over, just let me know and try to go class. Okay, so I'm not going to go over exporting quite yet. We'll do that on Thursday when we talk about posting on the Open Lab. So that's the next thing that we'll do with Illustrator is we'll learn how to export the images like we did in Photoshop. It's very similar, so it's not, I don't think it's important to go over it right now. I think you guys can just work in Illustrator for a little bit and then okay. Again, on Thursday, we'll look at exporting. We'll tie everything together in an Open Lab post, and then you guys will have time to kind of finish everything off first. Um, oh, actually, let me stop